So, for those of you who are joining us, welcome to the Oracle In podcast. I'm joined by Laquan and Kevin, and we're going to cover our third segment for today's episode, which is how relationships function in the 21st century.
They don't.
I think this is fascinating.
They don't.
So, Kevin, when you say they don't, why don't they?
So I think back to, ye olden times of the 90s, right? The heyday of me and my friends. And you didn't have, I know, right? But you had to, you didn't have social media. You didn't have cell phones, or, pagers were just kind of a thing. Cell phones were, very rare. So there was no videos. There was no people talking about you other than, to other people. So in this day and age of everything is public, it makes it really, really challenging to even enter into that area. So there's like a battle arena going on, right? You got Tinder and Plenty of Fish and, Farmers Only and
Christian Mingle.
Christian Mingle. You get all these things out there that are judging you, trying to put you into a box, essentially. And society is becoming like, oh, that's how this is done. So we've kind of created, you can still walk up to someone and talk to them at a bookstore, at a bar, or whatever. But this idea of dating and relationship development, to me, seems like it's kind of gone off the damn rails.
So here's some interesting statistics on this. Rebecca Traister, who's a modern feminist, and I have to admit, I'm really warming up to how she delivers her message, because she seems to want to do it by what are some of the facts, and how do we look at what exactly is going on in society. So check out some of these stats. One of the most startling statistics is that today only 20% of Americans aged 18 to 29 are married. And that compares to 60% back in 1960. So we have 20% of Americans 18 to 29 who are married. The proportion of married adults dropped from 57% in 2000 to 52%. So it looks like adults in general are getting married a lot less. And she stated some of the reasons why. And it really made me think a lot about, what is going on with women's rights, with the recognition of really valuing women equally as we do with men. And it's really interesting to see that the more independent that women become, and men for that matter, but I think more so with women, because traditionally speaking, they've always had to hold it down at home in order for the man to go out and earn the money. So basically she had to cover his backside, preparing the food, making sure the house is clean, all the things that he didn't have time to do because he had to go out into the workforce. And slowly over time, when cities started to grow and urban areas started to grow, Rebecca talks about this, where when cities really started to boom and jobs especially were being created, women from rural areas would start to move towards the city, and then they become more independent because those same services, like even something as doing laundry. Now you have things like laundromats, food is more readily available. You had a cart outside. So it was this whole movement of women slowly becoming more independent, and how that plays into relationships. And I think that has a lot to do with what we see today.
Well, I think that, so the kind of that, the independence, the moving away from that ideal of I need to marry a doctor or a lawyer, or, I need a wealthy man to take care of me. That kind of, it's still out there. I know people that are well ingrained into that mindset. That, it's about marry up or, get a hot one and leave her at home. Right. So, I think the other part, and it would be interesting. I don't have any statistics up on it because it just popped into my head, but so one of the fastest growing religious group is atheism as a catch-all. It's the biggest. People are starting to not believe, and when you look at what marriage really is, it's being coveted so hard by the religious institutions, but really it's just a contract with the state that you two are going to file taxes jointly, essentially. Right. So when you see people that are starting to move away from the church, move away from this idea of, you know, you have to be married to have sex, to have children, to have a partner for life. When you start moving away from that, and you start having women that are seeking out higher education, seeking out their own careers, or the independence, what you're creating is a situation where not a whole lot of people are going to be getting married, because it's unless you're in a certain box, it's a bullshit scam, right? I mean, it doesn't do much for you other than you say, oh, it feels nice because we got to go get drunk with our buddies and you got to wear a white dress.
Yeah, I can agree with that. I want to plug Helen Fisher from TED Talk. She did a great TED Talk called "Technology Hasn't Changed Love," and she talked a lot about that and why marriage is the way it is right now. Why less people are getting married. She said a lot of it is attributed to kind of what Eric was saying earlier, is women moving into the workforce. And I think a lot of that that's one of the biggest components. Because instead of staying home, having kids, and just raising them, and then waiting until they're out the house and then starting your career, a lot of women now are like, what, I want to get my career going. I want to make my money. I want to get my house first. And then I'll see if I want to take on a mate at that point, And so, and it's almost, again, it's a double-edged sword too, because, she also was talking about how relationships are moving more to an egalitarian type relationship, as in, equality for both, so the traditional, I'm the man, I'm the head of the household, you're the woman, you have to have a little bit of, submissiveness to you, et cetera, et cetera. That is dying out. And she was, I forgot the stat she was brought up, but, if you get a chance to look at it, but she was saying moving forward, that is definitely going to that realm. And she was saying that, what she was saying, but anyway, it kind of slipping my mind now, but I think that's what it is too. And most guys kind of still have that old school traditional mindset, as I'm the guy, like I should be, I'm
I have to pay. I have to pay for the date. I have to, that whole historical, I am the breadwinner and you are, it's still there. I know a lot of people that are still in that zone. I don't want my wife working.
But it's weird though too.
I'm the husband. I got to make the money.
Yeah, you brought that up. But here's another thing too with that, and it was just, oh man, I can't remember the guy's name, but he had this great seminar I saw online. He was asking women. He was like, a lot of y'all independent here and stuff like that, and he was like, you want the guy to pay for the date, you want the guy, to still be the gentleman and stuff like that. But when he asks you for sex, or if he asks you for this, then all of a sudden now he's this and that. But you want him to pay for everything, but you don't want to give anything in return. Not saying you have to give sex, but that was the example he was saying. Like, well, if you're asking him to do all this, but when he's asking for something back, you're looking at him like he's weird now, or like he's this, or you're typical and stuff like that. And so for me, I know I can speak for myself. And I know sometimes I come off like a dick to a lot of women, but I'm like, no, you make money too. I'm a traditional guy too. I'm raised in the South, and I understand about paying for dates too. And I don't mind paying for a couple of days, but after a while, you're coming out that purse, because my money is just as important as your money too. No, seriously, because if it doesn't work out, I don't want to feel like I've invested way more in this than you did. Because his thing too, and it's actually coming back to me. His thing too is that his time is just as important as your time. So if you want him to pay you, in a sense, he's paying for your time. So every date, every time he takes you to Dave and Buster's or wherever he takes you, he's paying for your time. You know what I'm saying? So, and his time is just as precious as your time. So you should be paying half or whatever too, because both your time should be looked at as equal. So if he's paying all the time, and if it doesn't work out or he doesn't get anything out of it, then what did he get in return? Like, it should be mutual until there's feelings involved. And then, at that point, a traditional mindset to take in, if that's kind of how you were raised. So
I've read a few things where girls are talking about dates, and one thing I keep seeing is, girls, like especially broke college students, are like, sometimes I go out on a date just because I'm hungry.
Oh yeah.
I don't have the money, so I'm gonna go out with the guy so he buys me dinner and then I'm out. And I'm like, but that's what's going on. Right now, Japan, I think, is a great example too. I was just reading an article that said they've officially sold more adult diapers than child diapers in Japan, meaning they're having so few babies, and the population's aging, that they're actually selling more adult diapers than baby diapers.
Good old
That's
dependent.
been for a few years now, but yeah, their birth death rate is upside down. Like they cannot stabilize their population because more people are dying off than they're able to repopulate. What I think is interesting about this, though, and I think we're in a transitory period because part of a woman having to rely, and keep this in mind, this is like in our parents' generation, our grandparents' generation, and everything before then. But I feel like women are in this position where they're coming out of the house, and I think it's an adjustment for them too, because at the same time, when you're saying a guy's paying for her time and everything, if a guy's dumb enough to do that, then why wouldn't you take advantage of that? Like, if you know a woman that treated you every time you went out, are you really going to fight that and be like, no, let me get half of this? Or are you going to be like, well, you must be doing good financially, so yeah, why not? You want me here? Sure, I'll show up and be here.
Yeah,
So
absolutely, I'd fight for that.
So, but what I'm trying to say,
you can't say he's dumb though, because you did say transitory phase. Some guys are still under that old impression, like, all right, cool, I'm gonna pay for a couple of dates, and it should lead to something. I'm not saying sex, but like maybe a relationship or something like that. So you're not under.
I don't know.
To me, I'm looking at it from an overview, saying like, you're paying for like her time, but most guys aren't looking at it like I'm paying for your time. You know what I'm saying? Like, unless you're like really kind of educating yourself and kind of putting yourself out there in the world, you're not really looking at it like that. I'm just saying, for me, that's what it is. You are paying.
My test is on the first date. I had an ex-girlfriend on our very first date. When it came time for that check to come, I want to see her at least reach for it, at least make an attempt to say like, well, let's split it. Because it's like that first date that sets the tone of, you're either going to expect me to pay for everything, or you recognize, hey, I got to bring something to the table too. But the point that I wanted to come back to is just that what I think is interesting about this dynamic of everything is that women do not have to attach so firmly to a man that may not really make them happy. So women can be way more selective nowadays. And if they don't find a man, it's fine. They can be independent. They can hold it down on their own. And I feel like in a way it causes men to step up and kind of, it's like we've also fallen into that trap of we expect that if we pay for a meal, then that must mean that there's some sort of obligation or everything. And it kind of forces us to rethink some things too, because if they're in a position where they can be more selective, then it's like we need to be in a position to really listen to them more and see what really makes a woman happy. Because I think part of what has oppressed women for so long is that it got to a point where women were expected to find a mate as opposed to find somebody to fall in love with, like arranged marriages, or, finding a guy who's okay, but the family accepts him. So you wind up being married to this person that you're not really, truly, deeply, passionately in love with, but it works. It makes the families happy. You know what I mean? That's slowly going away.
It is, but here's another thing too. Like, you have, and I'm all for. I'm glad we have women out there pursuing their goals, getting degrees, being very successful out there too as well. So it's a transitory phase for everybody. And I think for the guys too. And so when you have an ultra successful woman, right? She's like, well, this is what I'm looking for, man. Not every guy's going to be like that, and it doesn't mean because he's not that he's not a great guy. You see what I'm saying? It's just that everybody has different views for their own life, right? Like some guys like, what, I don't want college. I'm really good with my hands and I can do this and do that, and I do that great. So in a sense that kind of puts a guy down and almost kind of distances herself from good guys, because it's like, well, this is what I'm looking for, and I want this and I want that and I want this. So it's just like, all right, yeah. So then you end up being single and bitter, then you end up, it can go for a guy or a girl, of course, but then you end up adopting, and you're like, I don't need men ain't shit, blah, 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 blah. And it's like, well, you've filtered out all the good guys from these unrealistic.
Well, you're bringing up a really good point, because I feel like with this new independence, and this is just my opinion on it, just my perspective, but it feels like if there's also this new independence and you can be far more selective, there's also, I feel like, a greater expectation of perfection too. I'm going to find the perfect guy. And if this guy has a few, character flaws or something like that, there's more out there for me, as opposed to back in the day, sometimes, and, we're speaking very generally, but sometimes you work it out and you figure out that, wow, I was able to work out some of my faults and I helped her work out some of her faults. And now we actually have a really good relationship because we were able to challenge one another, as opposed to, no, you weren't perfect at the gate. So I feel like there's a little bit of that going on too. So
Ann Coulter,
big fans of her.
Q knows where I'm going. So I'm not even going to give context because fuck her. I'm going to make her look worse. She had a tweet on January 25th at 6:15 p.m. where she says, "How about our real caps? Real is in caps. Our real problem is that many men have no choice but to rape because they have no opportunities to date attractive women."
Whoa.
There's no woe over here. I'm not surprised at anything that comes out of her mouth.
But does she do it because she just needs attention?
No, that's how she talks.
I'm not speaking for her. Chick is nuts.
Yeah.
Damn,
So, but I mean, I think it does, like, it's a terrible statement, but I think it does kind of show that a hint into the rape culture that we talked about, you know, previously. And well, I need to get a trophy wife, and you know, I'm gonna go get one.
Yeah, and you know, to Eric's point too, about, you know, if you stick it out with a person, you know, I'll use a personal example for myself. You know, if you've been single for a while, or if you've lived a certain, so let me put this in context for, like, I can speak for, you know, I can only speak for a guy's perspective. If you've only dealt with certain type of women in your life, right, and it's not a good or bad thing, you know, but and maybe you've got away with a lot of things, or nobody just checked you on some of your behaviors and stuff, and so it was in a sense normalized. So when you meet somebody who maybe is a little bit more mature, you know, than you've dealt with before, and she's like, "Oh, I can't deal with that." But if you used to give that person a shot and be like, you know what, you can teach people. You know, each person can be taught different things and stuff like that. So it's all about staying the course and being like, well, look, I didn't know what I was doing was wrong because it's been normalized. I didn't know that, you know. So it's like now you're jumping down my throat, you know, about this, but I didn't know because everybody's experience is different. You know, maybe she dealt with more mature guys before, and like it's not like you're immature. It's just that this is where you're at right now. You know, it's like you don't know what you don't know. You know, and so if you're ready to throw somebody away that quickly, and it's just like you're never really gonna find a good quality person because some people take time to, you know, get to where they need to be. So
yeah, there's a comedian I saw it somewhere on the interwebs, but it was you know, in that idea of, you know, trying to make it work out, try to stick it out. It was nothing says someone cheated like a joint Facebook account. and I saw that, and you know, instantly I started laughing my ass off because I know a few people that have joint Facebook accounts, and I'm like, you know, but at least they're trying to stick it out, right? It's probably true. Like you can imagine. No, bitch. Together, we're togetherness. You send a message, I get a message. You understand?
I think we're in a microwave society, right? And this is what I'm saying, closing for myself. When you go on the internet, when you go on Instagram, right, you see some of the hottest girls, right? And then for a girl, she sees some of the hottest guys, right? It's just readily available right there. So, right. So your expectations, you're always seeing better and better and better every day, right? So it's like, it's hard to be happy with what you have when you keep seeing better and better and better, and you want more and more and more, right? So it's easy just to throw somebody to the side, like, you know what, I'm gonna go for this person. This person's a little hotter. This person's this. So the old days of the 90s, the 80s, the 70s, of like, you know what, we're in this together. We're gonna stick it out. You know, this is love. I do love you. We have that in common. We're going to work it out. You know, that's gone now. You know, now it's on to the next. And everybody knows your business too, because as you know, you was talking about that before, Kevin. You was saying that before. Like, everybody knows your business. For me, I'm a very private person. Nobody will ever know if I'm dating somebody. You always think I'm single. Nobody ever wants me. You know what I'm saying? Because I don't put that out there. I don't want, the more people in your business, the less likely you're going to be successful in your relationship. Too many hands in a pot is never good. You know, and it doesn't mean that I don't want to claim this person. It's just that it's nobody's damn business. You know, but we got going on between us. If you want to put it on your Facebook or your Instagram, that's fine. I'm not putting it on mine, you know, because I like to keep my life private. It's far and few between things in this world now that are actually private. If you think about it, what's really private to you anymore? And that's lost. You know, like your own personal space is lost because everybody wants to Facebook it. Everybody wants to Instagram it or tweet it, you know, so, and I'm old school. I don't like doing that. You know, I don't want you to know about my business unless I tell you. That's all I had.
Kevin, you got any closing remarks?
You know, not really. This is something that, it's an interesting topic that we could, go on and on and on about, but we live in a different time than I remember. Like, so as you get older, and if you are, single, you kind of, you go back to that spot where you last had to go try to meet women or men or whatever, you go back to that, because that's how you're supposed to go out and meet people. And it's interesting to see, at least in my own experience, having, dated and done all that stuff pre-internet, and then trying to go back into it post everything. It's just like, man, I don't want to play with this shit anymore. I'm gonna go home. I'm gonna go home, watch some Netflix, and get a bunch of cats.
Well, I think for me, one of the things that I've learned is that, and this is just my experience, but prior to this last relationship that I've been in, I thought I was doing pretty good in life. I thought I was, having a fair amount of success. I had a path in front of me. I thought, I'm sure I got some qualities that could use some improvement, but overall, I thought I was doing pretty good. It wasn't until I truly let somebody into such a close and intimate space that I really reserved just for myself, in my mind and in my heart. And by allowing another perspective into that, I actually learned I have a lot of things that I needed to work on. And through the course of years, I found out some things about myself that I could not have possibly have discovered on my own. With all the meditation and all the introspection and everything that I do, it's not until somebody can actually reflect that back to you that you can actually grow and realize, like, oh, I didn't think it was that big of a deal, but the way I see it affecting this person that I care about, now I'm actually realizing that, wow, it's not as small as I thought it was. This is actually a little bit more significant. I found out that I have been suffering from an anxiety disorder since I was like 7. And I didn't realize how serious it was until, I realized that I was hurting somebody that I cared very much about. And in the process of learning why was I hurting somebody that I care about, I started to realize that it's because I have something going on underneath all those layers. And when I got help for it, I got therapy. I had to retrace back to when I was 7 years of age. When did everything start? Why did it start? How has it grown over the many years that it's been with me? I was able to actually work on it and really improve a big area of my life that I had been suffering from. And I didn't really think of it as suffering. I just thought a bunch of people were pissing me off in life, not realizing that I was creating a lot of my own, because there was this underlying anxiety, and anxiety can stem from anger. It can stem from fear, whatever. And having that kind of awakening would not have been possible if, one, I wasn't open to being in a relationship and truly caring, not just caring for the other person, but wanting to respect them on a level to really, truly listen, because sometimes when people criticize us, we don't want to hear that. It's like, no, don't tell me like you're better than me. And all that, as opposed to listening to, why is this person feeling so negatively? And if I'm the cause of that, what is it that I'm doing? So I think relationships nowadays are just really tricky for that, because unless you have both parties on some level that are open to growing, which means criticizing yourself and really getting down to that component, I think it just gets a little bit more complex. All right. Well, you guys have anything before we sign off here?
Yeah, I'd be remiss to not bring up Dakota Pipeline. People keep, Google it, find out what's going on. And also, I know we'll talk about this in another podcast, but, there was a big sex trafficking ring in California that was busted, I think last week. 474 people were arrested and 28 children were rescued. This is a growing trend, never gets mainstream news. It'll always be local news, and so we got to do better. So.
Yeah, maybe we can bring that up for another topic, because part of that podcast that I was listening to with Joe Rogan and Alex Jones, they kind of went off on this rant, and then I started looking up news articles, and it looks like what they were saying was actually true. But apparently there's a culture of child sexual predation, and it's from elitists, like especially white males that are in that upper 2%. For some reason, it looks like there's this culture that they really are fixated sexually on young boys and girls, and it kind of really creeped me out. But at the same time, it's like, okay, if this is going on, and I mean, if it sounds far-fetched, think about what the Catholic Church was doing for years, and then what finally came to light and was proven that, yeah, there was actually some real abusive things going on. So maybe we could bring that up for another topic another time. But at least for today, we'll go ahead and wrap this up. I want to thank everybody for tuning in, and we'll see everybody on the next episode.